1880, one of the most famous businessmen in America sat down to explain something almost nobody expected from him. Not how to run a circus, not how to fool crowds, not how to become famous. He wanted to explain how ordinary people could actually build wealth. And the strange part is, a lot of his advice still works today. The man was P.T. Barnum, the legendary showman behind massive entertainment empires, outrageous publicity stunts, and the phrase often associated with American hype itself. But beneath all the spectacle, Barnum understood something deeper about money, reputation, and human psychology. His book, The Art of Money Getting, wasn't written as fantasy. It was written as practical survival advice during a brutal era of American capitalism, when fortunes appeared overnight and disappeared just as quickly. And according to Barnum, most people failed for surprisingly simple reasons. Not because they lacked talent, not because they lacked opportunity, but because they ignored a handful of basic principles that quietly control wealth. The first major lesson in the book is almost painfully simple: choose the right occupation. Barnum believed one of the biggest mistakes people make is forcing themselves into work they hate simply because it seems profitable. In his eyes, people who dislike their work rarely stay focused long enough to master it. They become careless, impatient, and eventually replaceable. But people who genuinely enjoy what they do usually outperform everyone around them because they're willing to work harder, think longer, and survive setbacks that would make others quit. Barnum saw this constantly in business. Two people could enter the exact same industry, but the one who actually cared about the work almost always developed deeper knowledge, better instincts, and stronger relationships over time. He wasn't saying passion magically creates money. He was saying interest creates endurance, and endurance creates advantage. That idea becomes even more important when Barnum talks about persistence. Throughout the book, he repeats a brutal truth about success. Most people stop too early. They quit businesses too quickly. They abandon skills too quickly. They expect results too quickly. Barnum believed wealth usually comes slowly, almost invisibly at first. Small improvements stack over years until suddenly one person looks incredibly successful, while everyone forgets how long the process actually took. This is one reason the book feels surprisingly modern. Barnum constantly warns against the fantasy of instant riches. Even though he became famous during the gold rush era of American capitalism, he repeatedly argues that steady discipline beats reckless gambling almost every time. And that leads directly into one of the strongest themes in the entire book: debt. Barnum absolutely hated unnecessary debt. To him, debt was more than a financial problem. It was psychological control. The moment someone owes more than they can comfortably repay, they lose freedom. They begin making desperate decisions. They tolerate bad jobs, bad deals, and bad treatment because they no longer have room to breathe. Barnum warns readers not to confuse wealth with appearance. Someone wearing expensive clothes, eating lavish dinners, and showing off luxury goods may actually be trapped financially behind the scenes. Meanwhile, the quiet person living modestly may secretly be building real independence. This idea appears over and over in the book. Barnum admired restraint. He respected people who controlled their spending even after becoming successful because he understood how quickly lifestyle inflation destroys financial stability. And in one of the book's most repeated lessons, he warns readers about what he calls little leaks: tiny, unnecessary expenses, small, careless habits, constant waste that seems harmless in the moment. Barnum compares money management to a leaking ship. A massive hole will obviously sink a boat, but so will hundreds of tiny, unnoticed leaks over time. A person doesn't usually become poor because of one catastrophic purchase. They become poor because of endless, undisciplined decisions repeated daily for years. Today, that idea feels incredibly familiar. Subscription services, impulse shopping, online spending, luxury lifestyles on social media. Modern consumer culture practically runs on tiny leaks, and Barnum would probably look at all of it and say the exact same thing he said in the 1800s. If you cannot control small spending, large success becomes meaningless. But maybe the most interesting part of the entire book is Barnum's obsession with reputation. This mattered enormously to him. Barnum understood that trust creates economic opportunity. People want to work with reliable individuals. Customers return to businesses they trust. Investors back people who seem dependable. Opportunities naturally flow toward individuals with strong reputations. And what makes this fascinating is that Barnum himself became famous for spectacle, exaggeration, and publicity. But even he recognized that there's a difference between attracting attention and destroying credibility. In business, he believed honesty was profitable long-term. Not because morality is magically rewarded, but because trust compounds. If customers believe you consistently deliver value, your reputation eventually becomes more valuable than advertising itself. And speaking of advertising, Barnum absolutely believed attention was power. This is one of the most famous ideas in the entire book. He argued that many talented people stay poor simply because nobody knows they exist. In Barnum's world, invisibility was dangerous. You could have the best product, the best skill, or the best business idea, but if nobody noticed you, none of it mattered. This philosophy shaped his entire career. Barnum mastered publicity during a period when newspapers dominated public life. He understood how curiosity spreads, how controversy attracts crowds, and how storytelling creates emotional engagement. In many ways, Barnum was operating with a version of modern viral marketing over a century before social media existed. But importantly, he didn't recommend empty attention. He believed promotion works best when paired with genuine value. Publicity might bring people through the door once, but quality is what keeps them returning. That balance between marketing and substance is one reason the book still feels relevant today. Because modern business works the same way. Millions of people compete for attention every second online. Visibility matters more than ever. But eventually, audiences figure out whether something actually delivers value. Barnum understood both sides of that equation long before the internet existed. Another major lesson in the book is surprisingly human. Barnum repeatedly tells readers to treat people well, not just customers, everyone, employees, partners, workers, clients, strangers. He believed kindness, politeness, and professionalism created opportunities that aggressive people often missed. Someone who becomes known as difficult, arrogant, dishonest, or disrespectful slowly damages their own future without realizing it. Meanwhile, reliable and pleasant individuals naturally attract stronger relationships over time. This wasn't idealism, it was strategy. Barnum saw social trust as a form of invisible capital. And this connects to another important theme throughout the book, self-control. Barnum constantly warns against emotional decision-making. Greed, envy, pride, impatience, and desperation all destroy judgment. People lose fortunes because they chase status, panic during setbacks, or become obsessed with appearing successful. One of the quiet messages hidden inside the book is that wealth is often psychological before it's financial. People who cannot manage themselves usually cannot manage money either. That doesn't mean Barnum thought becoming rich was easy. In fact, parts of the book describe business as exhausting, stressful, and uncertain. He openly admits that success requires long hours, patience, and resilience. But he believed disciplined people gradually separate themselves from chaotic people over time. And once you notice this pattern in the book, you start seeing the same principle everywhere. The disciplined person saves while others overspend. The disciplined person learns while others complain. The disciplined person keeps building while others quit. Barnum believed those tiny behavioral differences eventually create massive outcomes. Now, it's important to understand the historical context behind all of this. Barnum wrote during the rise of industrial America, a period filled with railroad booms, financial speculation, exploding cities, and enormous inequality. Some people became unbelievably wealthy almost overnight, while others lost everything just as fast. The economy was unstable, competitive, and often ruthless. So the art of money getting wasn't really written as luxury advice. It was written as guidance for survival in a chaotic economic system. And that's partly why the book still resonates today, because modern life often feels just as unstable. Technology changes constantly. Industries disappear overnight. Attention spans collapse. Consumer pressure keeps growing. And through all that chaos, Barnum's advice remains strangely durable. Control spending, build trust, learn valuable skills, stay disciplined, promote yourself intelligently, avoid reckless debt, be patient. But there's also another reason the book remains fascinating. It reveals the mindset of one of history's greatest promoters. Barnum understood that money is rarely just about numbers. It's tied to emotion, perception, storytelling, and human behavior. Markets move because people believe things. Customers buy because they feel things. Crowds gather because attention itself becomes contagious. Barnum spent his entire life studying what captures human interest, and that may be the deepest lesson hidden inside the book. People often think wealth comes purely from intelligence or hard work. Barnum disagreed. He believed understanding human nature was equally important. What do people value? What attracts attention? What creates trust? What makes someone memorable? These questions shaped his empire, and even now, in the age of algorithms and social media, they still shape modern success. But despite all his advice about money, Barnum ends the book with something surprisingly grounded. He argues that wealth alone is not enough. A person who becomes rich but loses integrity, health, relationships, or peace of mind hasn't actually succeeded. Barnum admired ambition, but he also believed life becomes miserable when money turns into obsession. That final message gives the book an unexpected balance, because beneath all the business advice, the art of money getting is really about sustainability, building a life you can maintain, building habits that protect you, building a reputation that compounds, and building financial stability slowly enough that it actually lasts. More than a century later, some parts of the book definitely feel dated. Certain assumptions reflect the world Barnum lived in during the 1800s, but many of the core ideas still feel remarkably modern because human behavior hasn't changed nearly as much as technology has. People still chase shortcuts. People still overspend trying to impress others. People still underestimate discipline. And people still confuse visibility with real value. Barnum understood all of this long before modern finance books, entrepreneurship podcasts, or social media influencers existed, which is why The Art of Money Getting continues to survive generation after generation, not because it offers magical secrets, but because it focuses on timeless patterns. Spend less than you earn, protect your reputation, stay patient, learn constantly, treat people well, and understand that real wealth is usually built quietly, long before the world notices it. For a man famous for spectacle, that may be the most surprising thing of all.